Council President, I'd like to recuse myself from item 48, given that I sit on the Metro Board, and I think it would be inappropriate to vote on it here, and then I don't want to be conflicted out of voting on it there.
Got it. Okay.
So, thank you.
Councilmember Padilla.
Same as Mr. Oslowski, please.
Okay. On 4-8?
Correct.
All right. Councilmember Price.
Thank you, Mr. President. Out of abundance of caution, I'm recusing myself from item 18 because my wife's employer has worked with one of the organizations listed in the past. I'm also recusing myself from item 47 because I'm a landlord. Thank you.
All right. We have got a heavy agenda today, including we're opening up public comment on items that have already been discussed in committee several times. And we have a heavy agenda, so we're going to take public comment until 11 a.m. this morning. So that gives about 35 minutes for public comment.
Good morning, Yvonne Wheeler. I'm here to speak on item 47, LARSO, and general public comments.
Okay, so you have 1 minute for the item and 1 minute for general. Please begin with the item. Go ahead.
Okay. Good morning, Council President Harris-Dawson and distinguished members of the Los Angeles City Council. My name is Yvonne Wheeler, and I'm the president of the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor, and I'm here in strong support of updating LARSO. Housing and homelessness has been a cornerstone of my agenda for the Los Angeles labor movement. It used to be when union members could live where they work. Sadly, that no longer exists. Runaway housing costs, skyrocketing rents, and low-wage jobs have created a crisis that affects even union workers. A study on Kroger workers, a union company, found that 15% live in their cars. Another study showed that 1 in 5 fast food workers are housing insecure. And during last year's hot labor summer, when over 100,000 union members went on strike, housing affordability was a central issue across every one of those fights. If our union members with guaranteed raises can't keep up with the rent, imagine the struggle for those without a collective bargaining agreement. Ultimately, this comes down to values. Do we believe people should be able to live where they work or have a voice in their city? The Los Angeles labor movement believes both, that they should have a voice in their city and be able to live where they work. And so we are urging you, and we're all in on LARSO, and we're urging you to vote yes on a reasonable 3 to 4% cap with a 60% CPI. Thank you.
My name is Malachi Simmons. I'm with IATSE Local 728, and for us, this is also a safety issue. You're going to hear a lot of passionate arguments, but housing is safety. Housing is security. If you're in a violent home, affordable housing can be the difference between being able to move and being able to, or having to stay in that environment. For us, we also work 70 to 80 hours a week on production, and that means we have to drive an extra 4 hours after work if we're not able to afford to live within the Los Angeles County. So for a lot of our members, most of the deaths that occur in our industry occur in that drive home. So affordable housing, by making it available for people to live closer to where they work, results in more safety. And as President Wheeler had mentioned, in labor, when we argue or when we negotiate new contracts, we generally can only negotiate about a 3% increase. So a 3 to 4% cap on housing would be able to keep that within what we're able to negotiate with our contracts. If it's beyond that, then our members will fall back more and more every year. So I urge you to vote on a 0 to 3 to 0 to 4% cap. Thank you.
Hi, my name is George, and I'm a member of UAW 2478. My local represents over 2,000 workers at Caltech and in LA City. More broadly, UAW represents tens of thousands of workers across LA at public and private universities, in manufacturing, and in nonprofit workplaces. We are here today to urge the council to keep LA housed and to adopt a LARSO that preserves our wage increases and does not hand them back to greedy corporations. UAW workers, like most hardworking people of LA, are tenants struggling to make ends meet during this time of skyrocketing inflation. Across the board, one of the biggest reasons our workers cite for these hardships is the ballooning cost of housing. LARSO is vital in combating this and ensuring our workers stay housed. Critics of LARSA will say that rent stabilization is not the solution, as this will lead to mom-and-pop landlords being forced to sell ownership to corporate landlords, and that we should instead build more housing. There are a couple issues with this claim. First, that we can do both at the same time. But more insidious the more insidious problem is revealed when we actually look at who owns housing units in LA and who stands to benefit under the current system of housing. It is not the mom and pops who own majority of housing, but instead corporate landlords and private equity. And it is these corporations who end up owning the building contracts to these newly built units, some of which end up perpetually unfinished, others with their rent artificially jacked up, resulting in an ever-increasing number of empty homes, an ever-increasing number of evicted families, an ever-increasing number of everyday, hardworking Angelenos struggling to keep up with rent, and an ever-increasing number of unhoused families, further fueling the death spiral that is the LA housing crisis. Because at the heart of this issue, we see the rot plaguing our system of housing, which is a treatment of housing as a business asset whose only purpose is profit, rather than a human right, resulting in corporations treating LA as a game of a monopoly, instead of a vibrant, diverse community built off the backs of everyday working Angelenos. Passing LARSA would just be the first step in fighting for the rights of Angelenos, in fighting back against the corporate greed that threatens our beloved city. And we ask that the council joins us in this fight. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Gloria Junior. I'm a retired member and executive board member of Local 99. Just want to inform you, we represent more than 30,000 students and classified employees. At this present time, it is very expensive for we and the other family members to live in Los Angeles. Please take all of this in consideration, that we are one. In 2022, coming together, the teachers, we led the largest education strike in the U.S. history, along with our labor and community coalition. And that was a very tough fight. Still, with the cost of living skyrocketing, we can barely afford to keep food on our tables. So please take all of that in consideration. And as I stand here today, the increase of rent is very expensive. Please take every comment that I've made today. I love LA. Thank you.
Next speaker. Good morning. I assume item 47?
Yes, my name is Linda Rapka, and I'm here for 47 and general public comment.
So you have 1 minute for each. Go ahead.
All right, so I am a lifelong Angeleno and have rented in Echo Park, Los Feliz, and currently Silver Lake for the past 20 years. I'm also on the staff of and a member of the American Federation of Musicians Union, Local 47, which represents 5,000 working musicians in Los Angeles. I'm here because the housing crisis is threatening not just my ability to live here, but also that of thousands of musicians who work and rent in our city. High rents are pricing musicians out of Los Angeles, forcing them to choose between paying rent or feeding themselves and their families. Some have been forced to move to more affordable areas and have to commute for hours to be able to work where their jobs are here in LA. Musicians working in the gig economy do not have steady paychecks and need rent stability to sustain their careers and feed their families and to keep the musical arts here in Los Angeles. I urge you all to better serve all tenants in need of relief and cap the rent increase at 3%, because none of us can afford to wait.
Good morning. Which items?
Item 48, the gondola.
Okay, so you have 1 minute. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Edward Flores. I am a fourth generation Olvera Street merchant. My family have been merchants on Olvera Street since 1934. We've been there 93 years. We consider ourselves a community just like the Chinatown community that was displaced back in 1940 for the Union train station project. They're now being threatened with this gondola project being forced upon Olvera Street merchants, the landscape there, and the Chinatown community. This gondola station and the project has no business being placed on Olvera Street. That's the most historic core of LA. This modern project that doesn't belong there, it's being forced on Olvera Street and the surrounding communities. This isn't a public transportation system. It's a gondola project for the purpose of transporting individuals from Union Station, consumers to Dodger Stadium, and it's not for the purpose of the public's good. My court has a project in mind similar to the Americana up there. Please reject this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Fred Sutton with the California Apartment Association. Will all the housing providers in the House please stand up? We urge you to oppose item 47. It will make housing more expensive and harder to find. Reject arbitrary magic numbers. The Housing Department conducted a study. We put forth a peer review of that study. There are decades of research and literature on this. At least that exercise was rooted in data. The justification for this formula is that nine jurisdictions out of 400 in California have done something similar. The second largest city in America should not be following the lead of Cudahy without analysis. This also affects new construction. Even ADUs can be captured by its rules. These changes will not create a single new home, but they'll make it even harder to build, making the housing crisis worse for everyone. You cannot peg rent adjustments below inflation while costs, insurance, utilities, maintenance, and compliance continue to rise. Will the city peg DWP rates or trash franchise fees to the same formula? I think that should be a discussion. Why wouldn't you do it? Leadership requires facts and the courage to do what's best for the city. You cannot claim to be pro-housing while pushing regulations that are anti-housing provider. Reject this proposal and reject any magic numbers that will deepen our housing crisis. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. My name is Phyllis Ling, speaking in support of item 48. I'm a Chinatown resident by the proposed gondola and former chair of the Historic Cultural North Neighborhood Council. I'm here as founder of Stop the Gondola, and I urge you to approve the resolution against the project. After years of empty promises and greenwashing, it's time to put this to rest. Let's get real. If the gondola is ever built, the Dodgers would forever win the competition of having the stupidest and most overpriced transit to a sports stadium, courtesy of Frank McCourt, who, by the way, isn't even paying for the project. If you think a $1 billion gondola that's relying on tourist fares and sponsorships for funding isn't going to have financial problems, and that fares would stay free for those attending Dodgers games, you're kidding yourself. The biggest fairy tale is the idea of community benefits when this project still has no funding plan. Metro has many reasons to deny approval. The flawed EIR didn't even study privacy impacts and cut corners on the construction noise impacts. Please put the interests of ordinary people before a billionaire speculator. Our public spaces like LA State Historic Park must not be used for private gain. Thank you.
My name is Susan Humlai. My late husband was a member of the Chinatown Yards Alliance, a coalition of many, many community groups and many, many environmental groups that fought the Majestic Realty's proposal for warehouses at the cornfields in 1999 and 2000. Now that Cornfields is now an LA State Historic Park. The park is full of the history of LA. The Santa Madre, the mother ditch, which was built by the San Gabrielino Indians, carry water from the LA River to El Pueblo. The river station, the passenger station that Santa Fe Railroad had there is there. The hand-chiseled granite stones that line the walkway has been uncovered. It's incorporated into the walkways of the path of the State Historic Park. So now Mr. McCord, another real estate developer mogul from Boston, wants about 2 acres of this publicly owned 32-acre park. The 2 acres equal to more than 6% of the green space. And I say it's a collectively owned park. Why? Because it's we had to pay off Majestic Realty through a state bond that you and I are still paying off. So now the $30-some million bond is probably close to $100 million. So, and if you look under the hood of Mr. McCord's project, it's full of pie in the sky, promises. We don't need that kind of pie in the sky. My generation said no to the warehouses. This generation says no to the gondola. So please help us preserve the legacy of the coalition. Robert Garcia, attorney, Alicia Brown, Louis McAdams, founder of the LA River. Please help us save and preserve the legacy. Say yes to resolution that's before you, item 48. Thank you.
I'm John Christensen. I teach and do research in the Institute of the Environment and Sustainability and the Luskin Center for Innovation at UCLA, and I'm a founder of the LA Parks Alliance. I respectfully request that you support Council members Hernandez, Jurado, and Soto-Martinez's resolution requesting that Metro not certify the new EIR for Frank McCourt's gondola. The council members are opposed because of the harmful impacts this project would have on their constituents and communities. This is a textbook example where it makes sense to defer to the council members whose districts would be directly impacted by a project, since this project would have no benefits for other districts. There are far better solutions to the challenges of bringing fans from all over Los Angeles to Dodger Stadium, and the city is now studying them. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Meg Sullivan. I'm a CD5 voter and a mom and popper in a community with permissible rent increases that are equal to the entire full CPI. Even so, our operating costs are not beginning to keep pace with permissible rent increases. Since COVID, they have been skyrocketing. They now are growing 7% faster than our rents. So I can tell you that permissible increases less than the CPI absolutely will not work. The city will lose its oldest, most affordable rental properties. Owners will throw up their hands and exit the business, further exacerbating the housing crisis. So please preserve a full CPI. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Danny, and I work at a family-owned property management company. That said, let me set aside my landlord dog in this fight. In the Housing Committee last week, several city council members made two shared observations. Properties obviously need to cash flow to stay open, and most tenant rent increases come not from RSO limited increases on current tenants, but when a tenant moves out and a unit goes to market rent. Those are facts. Increasing the rent of new move-ins is often the only way to make an RSO building cash flow. But it's bad for renters. It is easy to make the mistake of thinking that if a long-term renter pays less rent, the landlord eats the cost. That RSO strikes a balance only between the landlord and the renter. But buildings have to cash flow to operate. We want them to stay open. As a result, as city council members have stated, new renters have to cover the difference. If one renter is paying the owner a loss, another renter has to pay that much more. So RSO is not just a balancing act between landlords and renters. It is a three-way balancing act between landlords, long-term renters, and new incoming renters. By having new renters subsidize long-term RSO tenants, we squeeze money out of the middle class and we route it to an arbitrary, unmeans-tested group of long-term renters. It's not just the landlord that has to foot the bill. It is growing families with new children who want to move to a 1 and 2 bedroom. Young adults moving out of their parents' homes and into their first apartments. People who want to live in range of their newly hired jobs. Incoming city citizens, and anyone who wants mobility in the city of Los Angeles. I urge you to consider this largely ignored third party. If a building cannot increase their rent at the rate of CPI at minimum, expenses still will. And if you want a building to stay open, it's not the landlord who pays, it's all of the above. I urge you to reject 3% increase limits, and I urge you to make RSO calculations based only upon 100% unreduced standard CPI. If a building's long-term tenants pose a loss, tenants make up the difference. Thank you.
Months ago, City Council ordered a report on the RSO to see what could be changed and what the impact of any change would be. The Housing Committee, finding the report conclusions to be out of step with their own political preferences, ignored the advice they paid for and pushed through changes they felt would make them look better. They did this thoughtlessly without caring about the impact of their proposal. For those of you who do care, I share a warning. If you change the RSO as proposed, you will reduce housing supply for the whole city, which means prices will increase for the whole city. When prices increase, the people that pay for the increase is anybody that moves, people like students, growing families, and young professionals. The change of the RSO in this way does not force housing providers to subsidize tenants. It forces people who move to subsidize the people who don't. If you don't believe me, your own study explains this problem. Furthermore, by your own report, most RSO buildings are owned by family owners. Look around this room. This room is not filled with faceless corporations. It's people who have scrimped and saved and put everything they can into providing for their families. If your answer to them is that owners can use the just and reasonable release valve to increase rent, I would counter with the harsh reality that J&R is designed not to work. J&R requires submitting actual physical paperwork like old tax returns and checks. It is not reasonable to expect somebody to produce a tax return from a time before the invention of the compact disc, before you let them recoup their losses adjusted for inflation. Here is another harsh reality. These RSO changes, coupled with the current J&R rules, will create zombie buildings, buildings whose cost of repairs exceed their ability to earn income because too many tenants pay too little in rent, leaving the owner unable to do anything about it because the records from decades ago no longer exist. I urge you to reject the changes as proposed and compromise with a 2% floor, 5% ceiling, and full consideration of CPI. Thank you for your time.
General public comment on item 47.
Okay, you have a minute for each. Please begin.
Okay. Yeah, hey, reaching out on behalf of dozens of housing providers in Los Angeles to implore members of LA City Council to vote no on the proposed changes to the RSO calculation formula, which would cap future rent increases at 3%, 60% of 3% or of CPI. LA in the past 5 years have seen cumulative rent increases of 7%, which equates to a 1.4% rent increase year over year. Property operating expenses have doubled, if not tripled annually. Several of these expenses, water bills, electric bills, trash bills, RSO and SCEP fees, are paid to the city for those who claim ignorance regarding the operating expenses increases for apartment owners. Insurance premiums have doubled, if not tripled, in the past year for apartment buildings that are 50 years and older, regardless of condition. These increase in operating expenses do not account for the increase of cost of materials and labor required for repairs, nor does it account for the increase in cost of borrowing money for housing providers who have outstanding loans on their properties. If this measure is passed, it will have several negative effects. The first being that housing providers will not be able to generate enough revenue to maintain their properties. The second will be that it will disincentivize the development of new housing. The third outcome it will induce distress amongst housing providers who have loans on their properties that are resetting at higher interest rates and do not have the income to pay for the loans of their higher interest rates. I urge LA City Council to reject the proposed change to the RSO calculation formula. Thank you.
Good morning, council members. I am an owner and developer of multifamily housing here in Los Angeles. And I want to start with a quote from Council Member Ramon. Overall, the only increasing the supply of housing can truly make this city more affordable. Only by increasing supply of housing can we truly make this city more affordable. And developers need capital to build, and capital needs to see a fair and predictable return. The world of capital providers are watching what you do here today. If you adopt the most restrictive rent formula in California, after 5 years of rent freezes and eviction moratoriums, you can do that. But understand what comes with it. You will scare off all capital needed to finance both market rate and affordable housing. Many new apartments have been built under today's rent control laws, with the understanding that rent adjustment would follow inflation. Investors in properties that are even exempt today are worried that they could be next. No controls today, but maybe tomorrow. In fact, 3/4 of major housing capital providers across this country have effectively already blacklisted this city for new apartment projects. Affordable housing rents rise with income. There's no 3% cap, but that's today. What will the government do tomorrow? Even more restrictive. Capital providers are not naive.
Good morning. May I ask the council members' attention, please? I've met individually with 7 of you, and I can't thank you enough for your time. but I'm really here for the other 8 of you. My name's Chris. I'm with Moss & Company Property Management, one of the largest management firms here in Los Angeles. Born and raised, we employ 390 Angelenos. I want to talk about unintended consequences. And this vote today will go down in history for our housing supply and our providers. I want to start with COVID. And those of you who met with me have heard these stats. Our COVID moratorium, eviction moratorium that the city extended for another 2 years beyond the state, resulted in $18 million of lost rent with no recourse for my clients, and I make up 1% of the housing supply in LA, so do the math. There was no recourse. That money was taken out of mom and pop, family-owned properties, and that's what paid the COVID bill. This rent control thing we're voting on today, I think I had 2 minutes.
You have another minute. Please
okay,
continue.
thank you. Like I said, it's going to go down in history. We can't afford it. The funny thing that everyone's talking about, these large corporations owning housing in LA, that's the unintended consequence of this vote today. If you vote and restrict RSO even further, you will force families out of the business because they can't afford it, leaving the door open for major corporations to take over housing in LA. I urge you to learn from the past. Think of the unintended consequences and ask yourself, especially the Housing Committee bringing this forward, is that the best we can do? One blanket rent control cap does not solve the problem. Is that the best we can do? I hope not. I still have faith in the city. I still have faith in you. I thank you for your attention. Have a great day.
Thank you, Speaker.
For item 47 first, hi, my name is Junie Wong. I'm an organizer with Chinatown Community for Equitable Development in CD1, and I'm a renter in District 14. Please vote yes on this motion to update the LA RSO formula. In Chinatown, every time a market rate housing complex gets built, a developer gets to brag about including affordable units in order for it to get built, only for our community members to move in and receive rent increase after rent increase after rent increase. That's exactly what happened at Metro Senior Lofts, where they've received increases 5 years in a row, with 2023 having 2 increases in the same year, and all of that was completely legal. It should not be legal to price people out into the streets. We have to take care of our seniors and take care of each other. A 3% cap is not asking for too much. The legal limit for the early pandemic was 4%, and COVID is still happening, so we should still have that. And our neighbors are now under attack by immigration enforcement raids and have to stay home a lot of the time. A 3% rent cap will save lives, and we can't let the yes on the rent cap.
Another minute, please continue.
Okay.
Sorry, we're having a little clock. Please go ahead.
Okay. It's me again. My name is Junie. Hello.
Hold on 1 minute. Please begin.
Okay. Hi, my name is Junie. I'm a Wong on my dad's side, and I'm a Louis on my mom's side from Toisan, southern China, where the majority of immigrants are from that first moved to LA Chinatown. Just walking around the neighborhood, I can meet people who remember my village well and our banyan trees that we live beside. In fact, there are 2 Wong and Louis families in Chinatown right now who reside right next to, and I mean directly the property next over, and also directly across the street from Frank McCourt's proposed gondola station, a 200-foot tower in a residential block of motors running next to historic homes of longtime Cantonese families and many more residents who are here today who do not want this project. They have long been opposed from the beginning, alongside merchants from Olvera Street, thousands of parkgoers at LA State Historic Park, at Elysian Park, and the descendants of the original Chicano families displaced by Dodger Stadium itself. There's so much more that is wrong with this. I urge you to please say yes to this resolution and urge Metro to reject the current EIR. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker.
I strongly oppose 48. I've been going to Dodger Stadium since 1953, actually. So the vision that I see for today is that we modernize it. Go directly from a vessel you come in and go directly to your seat, rather than look for parking, pay the extra fee. So it's eliminating all the cost that goes into just going to the game. So I strongly support the gondola. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Speaker.
Well, when it comes to the rent and everything, right now the city's it's a hot mess. Okay, with the fires and everything that's going on, I think everything has been so mismanaged. And now the burden is going towards the people with increased fees, fines, and with everything else, rent, everything else. And there's just a lot of instability, fear, anxiety, loss of, EBT, worried about, all kinds of things. So I think it makes sense to just kind of put a hold on things and let people recover, let the city recover, and, and deal with that, okay? I'm also seeing a lot of money going towards things that, like, I'm not saying it's unimportant, like a hydroponic garden, or I forget the other thing. I'm not saying these things are not important.
Okay, can you move on to the next item?
Oh, no, this is a new item.
Oh, go ahead.
About the hydroponic garden.
Okay.
Right, that's not rent control, right? All right, and so I see that the city's putting a lot of, asking for a lot of money for things that are great, like Metro this, or, gardens and theater productions. But we're in a crisis, okay? You have a room full of people here, in crisis, dealing with crisis of rent. We're dealing with all kinds of crisis. And as much as I love theater and as much as I love, hydroponic garden, it's right now there's no money to do anything that's required for our infrastructure. What about sidewalks? I just had yet another accident. Okay, because at night there's no lights, and then there's all these, you don't know where the potholes are in the sidewalks, and I almost get flipped in my chair. So instead of having a hydroponic garden, can I have a sidewalk that works? Okay. Can I have lights, that work? And, all right,
next item, please.
Okay, sir. The next item is taking the money from, okay, with the budget with LAPD, and no offense to LA, to our officers here. But it seems like, they're giving a lot of money, robbing from Peter to pay Paul, okay, to help, increase the budget. It seems like a backdoor budget increase for the police. And LAFD is having baked goods sales to, I don't know, fix their buildings or, provide care for their trucks. And it just seems like disproportionate at this time. I want I'm not against the police being funded, but they get the lion's share already. And so why are we taking from, the fire to pay Medicaid, which I want Medicaid paid for, don't get me wrong, but why from our fire department when you've already proven that, the city was not prepared for a big fire? And crime is down, they say, right? Every time I go to every police commission meeting, crime's down.
Thank you.
Is this public comment?
General, yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Shout out to Smoke and Scan, first of all, and I'm just here to remind Mr. Lee, you still owe me that apology for being rude. And Mr. President, can you bang the gavel and remind him? Thank you. Because you guys should be listening to the people, okay? And you guys are kind of doing better with it, but not good enough. Thank you, Mr. McCusker, you're doing great. Appreciate it. Mr. Nazarian, come on. You're my dude. You're my, you have to pay attention. Come on. Okay, that being said, you know why I'm here, right? I'm here to remind you all that Scientology is abusing not only its people, okay, but they're abusing the permits. They're abusing the city systems in place with no consequences whatsoever. Okay, if all of you, can we take a school trip or a council trip down there to see all the abuses, okay, and how you're going to be followed and stalked by security on a public street that you will not be able to, you're going to have a hard time getting through. All you council people, they're not going to know who you are or care, and they're going to chase you out of a public street. You're going to go see it for yourself if you can. But they are building towers without permits.
Thank you, Speaker.
Okay, thank you. My name is Tani, and I support item 48. Over 10,000 people have signed the petition to stop the gondola, including these 2,000 signatures that have been collected since this March. As a Chinatown resident and unpaid volunteer, I have had thousands of face-to-face conversations with constituents who agree that a 1.2-mile-long gondola from Union Station to Dodger Stadium makes no sense, would hurt our residents and local businesses, businesses and wouldn't help traffic. Gondola supporters have stated on the record that they would drive to downtown to get on the gondola, thereby adding to traffic and turning Chinatown and Olvera Street into the Dodgers parking lot. The SEIR is flawed in its noise analysis on Savoy Street and suggests that residents just keep our windows shut for 2 years of construction. Let's prioritize and expand the existing Dodger shuttle buses. Yes on item number 48, no gondola. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. Good afternoon. I'm Eric White with PMI Properties. We manage and develop small to mid-sized multifamily buildings across Los Angeles, and I'm here because what happens in our buildings matters for the city's housing goals. Let me share 3 numbers that tell the story. First, market rents are up less than 1% over the last 12 months. Second, operating costs have averaged 6% plus annually over the last 5 years, and 7.5% without taxes, with explosive spikes in insurance, utilities, and compliance in 2023-2024. And third, from 2020 through 2025, Los Angeles allowed the lowest rent increases of any rent-controlled city in California. Meanwhile, CPI, whether you include or exclude shelter, is tracking in the low 3% range this year. The market is already holding rents down, so let the system work. ADUs are being built, ED1 is producing new affordable apartments, and new density incentives are coming online. Pushing a blunt new restriction now could be counterproductive. My ask is narrow and practical. Take the 60% of CPI capped at 3% option off the table. It's an extreme measure that will underfund basic maintenance and scare away housing capital from Los Angeles. The nation of capital provider is watching what you do. Whatever you do today needs to be fair and balanced. Do not scare capital providers and starve developers of capital to build new apartments, both market rate and under Mayor's ED program. That is fair and balanced to protect tenants in a flat rate environment without starving buildings of the resources needed to stay safe, habitable, and online.
My name is Anna Sharan, and I have worked at Hudson LAX for 13 years, and I am a proud member of United Here Local 11. We support to keep LA house demands and strengthen LARSO. We believe that the rent stabilization ordinance should be updated to a 0% floor with a 3% cap and calculating rent increases based on 60% CPI all items. Me and my coworkers fought for more than 2 years for an Olympic wage so that we will be able to live near where we work. Yet for so many of us, the rent is still too high. We need a stronger LARSO to ensure that workers like myself are able to stay in our homes and not be displaced because of extreme rent increases and lack of protection. Cap the rent at 3%. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What did you want to speak on?
General public comment.
Excellent. Please go ahead.
I think you guys are starting to get to remember me. I'm here on behalf of the cult of Scientology's disgusting behaviors and infiltration into the city. I'm going to keep coming as a child born and raised in the internal organization, the C organization, where they have children and adults all acting as adults, no matter what age you are, infiltrating the city, getting into the programs that are helping the homeless, that are helping the structure of people to get better jobs, things like that. They will get onto the CPAP boards, Janet Whelan. We have people going against protesters, exposing the cult of Scientology and their child abuses and human trafficking that Kendrick Moxon, one of their lawyers, is literally putting into lawsuits, ROs, fake fucking shit. Anybody exposing or connecting the city's connection to Scientology is getting attacked. I just lost my job 2 weeks ago from Scientology's harassment to the people I work with, and I can't have that, so I had to lose my job.
Thank you.
You will see me every day.
Thank you, Speaker.
Afternoon, members of the LA City Council, Council President. My name is Sean Mason. I'm a proud 8-year and counting member of IATSE Local B192. I represent more than 3,000 hardworking, skilled laborers from Universal Studios Hollywood, the Hollywood Pantages, Dodger Stadium, and an ever-increasing amount of laborers from some of the most iconic and historic entertainment venues in all of Southern California. Every weekday, Every weekend, from sunrise to sunset and back to sunrise again, the laborers of local B192 do not rest. We wake up hours earlier than necessary in order to commute to work from outside the city because we can't afford to live where many of us were born and raised and others dared to forge a humble life. We've been priced out, shut out, and forced into subscription-based servitude that we will no longer tolerate. On behalf of our entire membership, we demand the City Council vote yes on the rental cap of 3% with no floor. All power to all the people and solidarity forever. I only needed one.
I'm Marion Dodge. The Hillside Federation, representing 46 resident associations spanning the Santa Monica Mountains, voted to oppose Frank McCourt's gondola project at its meeting in April 2024. This resolution, drafted by council members Hernandez, Soto-Martinez, and Jurado, elegantly describes many of the reasons why the gondola project should be denied approval. The Federation thinks that the most egregious issue is that the project would take public park land away from the low-income local residents, many of them immigrants, in a very park-poor neighborhood, and give it to a billionaire to access his private development. This is wrong. The Federation urges all council members to support this resolution. These council members are protecting their constituents from the multiple impacts of this project. Someday, you will need their votes when you're trying to protect your constituents. Please vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker.
Council members, my name is Megan Edner-Briseño. This RSO proposal before us today is excessive, arbitrary, and destroys the reasonable balance required to maintain aging RSO housing stock. My concern is that the rent cap in most years will not be 3%. We keep saying 3%, but it won't be 3%. It will likely be 1.2%, 1.5%, and this is simply not enough to maintain properties in a safe and habitable manner. Per the report that was commissioned by this council, expenses on operating units have been exceeding the CPI, the full CPI for the last 12 years. That's on page 100 of the Economic Roundtable report. The fair return application, it is a 28-page application. This application requires professional level consulting to complete. It is, like someone else said, meant to make you fail. And this is not a solution for delivering a yearly adjustment for inflation. And imagine when you have thousands, tens of thousands of owners trying to submit this, the time it takes now is over a year just to get a return response on this. This is not a solution. The fair return application is not a solution for adjusting to yearly inflation. You cannot hang your hats on that. I warn against doing something like this for our city. This is excessive. This is not workable. There is a better way forward. Thank you.
Danielle Moskowitz. I'm a small mom and pop property owner for 43 years in District 5. There's no urgency to change the CPI or other than the false one that's created by the DSA and the coalition to redistribute private property from landowners to the landless. This is on their website. That is clearly stated here. Also, their goal is to live where they want, with whom they want, and how they want. So they are using you, ladies and gentlemen, to meet their ends by creating a problem to exploit, which will never be solved in this way. There is no need to reduce CPI. The CPI doesn't work and doesn't cover landlord cost anyways. California's rental housing is undergoing major shifts, some of which are devastating. The current rental housing situation in Los Angeles is that rents are resetting. The rents have declined 8% in 2025. It is the steepest drop since 2009. Vacancy rates are over 4%, with property owners having to offer free free parking and other incentives. Some properties on the west side once thought that vacancy and reduction proof are now completely vacant. Current inflation is only 3%, yet March 2025 cost to redo my electrical system in my building was $23,000. In October, the same work is $40,000. Fire insurance, if you can get it, has increased to almost double. You can't offer a negative return of inflation plus costs and expect me to continue to provide a service. That is a violation of the 13th Amendment, which has abolished slavery and involuntary servitude. Providing housing is a service, and no one has the right to someone's work without compensation. What is being proposed does not allow me compensation for my investment of time, energy, money, and work.
Thank you very much. Actually, your time expired. Thank you. Hello, Speaker. Which items do you want to speak to?
Please support item 48. If Frank McCourt wants to develop his parking lot, let him do it, because then he'll also need to build more parking up there anyway for the people who will live and work up there. He won't need to cause a mile-long path of destruction from Alvera Street to the stadium. Why cause irreparable upheaval to our neighborhoods for a ridiculously lame tourist gimmick? Besides, the efficient, cost-effective solution could not be easier. The Gondola's outdated budget could buy almost 400 zero-emissions electric buses. So expand the Dodgers Express to a citywide park and ride system which will genuinely take cars off the road, easing traffic from our neighborhoods. With dedicated bus lanes to and from the stadium, more people will be transported more quickly than any gondola ever could, while preserving the history and character of our neighborhood. Save Chinatown, save our park, ignore the shills, support item 48, stop the gondola.
Council President, that's all the speakers for the allotted time.
Colleagues, I urge your support for the resolution to oppose the gondola project. It affirms the City of Los Angeles' official position to the Los Angeles Aero Rapid Transit Project, the so-called gondola. This is not a regional transit solution. This is not a serious proposal to move Angelinos. This is not public transportation. It's a $500 million gimmick. It's a private, unsolicited proposal by Frank McCourt to take public land to ferry ticket holders to a stadium that's empty most of the year. They told us this would solve traffic at Dodger Stadium, but a UCLA study found it would reduce traffic by only 0.9%, just 600 cars. And what is the price for this 0.9%? Permanently removing 2 acres of open space at State Historic Park, removing over 160 trees, gondolas 40 feet above Chinatown and Solano Canyon homes, flying 26 feet above the LA State Historic Park, adding electric billboards in historic areas. And all of these impacts for what? So a private parking lot owner can funnel more money into his portfolio? My constituents have been screaming no for years. It was one of the things I heard most when I was knocking doors in Solano Canyon, Lincoln Heights, and Chinatown. Metro's first environmental impact report was so inadequate that a court had to decertify it. The new supplemental EIR is just as flawed, and the public process was dishonest. We do the work of bringing people in so that we can hear them in person in public comment, but Metro denied an in-person hearing and instead offered only a single Zoom call. This project is an insult to our communities, and the process has been an insult to our collective intelligence. The gimmick is over. It's time to protect our neighborhoods. I want to thank Councilmember Isabel Jurado for co-introducing and Councilmember Soto-Martinez for seconding. Again, this resolution tells Metro that the City of Los Angeles refuses to be bought by shiny renderings and empty promises. Literally, there is no financial plan for this project. And that the City of Los Angeles will not sacrifice our public parks and neighborhoods for a billionaire's vanity project. Colleagues, I urge you to support our resolution and tell Metro to reject this project once and for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Hernandez. Let's open the roll on this item, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes, 2 noes.
Colleagues, I know that we're going to have a rich discussion today, but the conversation that we're going to have today was teed up 2 years ago when we passed a broad expansion of tenant protections in 2023. While those changes took place while we were removing pandemic protections, the underlying system of tenant protections and our rent increase formula that we were dealing with then came from an earlier era in Los Angeles and hadn't been updated in over 4 decades. We have had a system that has allowed rent to rise above inflation year after year. In fact, for more than 20 of the past 40 years that we've had this ordinance in place. And because we've had vacancy decontrol and half of units turn over every 4 to 5 years, rents in our rent-stabilized housing stock have risen a lot, part and parcel of the skyrocketing cost of rents across the entire city. Only greater supply will sustainably reduce costs for all renters in LA, but I also believe that our rent stabilization formula is overdue for a change. And while I believe there is widespread agreement on this body that a change is needed at this time, I also know that there are real differences around this horseshoe in how we make those changes today. Those were apparent even in committee. But I encourage us all, colleagues, today to work towards finding agreement and to passing an update. I also want to say that whatever happens today, between the new tenant protections that we passed in 2023 and the additional support for renters from Measure ULA and Measure A funds, we have collectively managed to change City Hall's orientation over the past 5 years towards a system that is working much harder than it was before to protect vulnerable tenants and to keep people from getting priced out of the city. I am proud of that work. Our people are our city. But now it's time to focus on making sure our existing systems work, that our city works. Our office spends an extraordinary amount of time on case management for tenants, for landlords, for developers, building everything from market rate housing to homeless housing, and across the board, whoever we're doing that case management for, what we hear is that city bureaucracy is not working for them. Whether it's LAHD or DWP or the Department of Building and Safety or the city attorney, we have to follow through on our promises to everybody. Whether it is the tenant facing harassment or the landlord who wants to make repairs or the builder trying to get their permits, to fix that is governance. That takes work that happens mostly outside of these chambers. That is not going to generate headlines, but to me, that does have to be the relentless focus of our work going forward. So thank you, colleagues, and I look forward to our discussion today.
I listened to both of the committees, and I want to sort of bring it here. You know, oftentimes this gets so much attention. The city council meeting gets so much attention, and committees often don't. And I really want to have that discussion here about operating income, expenses, the values of the RSO units, profitability, things like that. Because oftentimes I feel as though the small mom and pop landlords are used as a way to, in my personal opinion, sort of guide the conversation. Because we all know small mom and pop landlords, and you know, we feel a lot more sympathy for them than
Mr. City Attorney.
You know, I love it when people that we don't expect to act like this, because it makes everyone on my side look a lot better. But you know, thank you so much. And I really want to get to the heart of that. Can you just, in your own words, try to phrase that in a way that I think is understandable for the entire public, what the study showed regarding operating expenses and profitability, turnover, values of the land?
With regard to small landlords,
and just in general.
The study found that in general, small landlords are not suffering greater distress than the RSO overall inventory.
Great. Can you repeat that again? Yeah, it's not as very loud. Yeah.
The study found that in general, small landlords are not experiencing greater financial distress than RSO landlords are overall.
Right. Thank you.
Also, average rents for units owned by small
Can we please,
landlords.
It's hard to hear when people are being disruptive in the audience.
In general, yes, vacancy decontrol means that landlords continue to be able to operate profitably as time goes on.
Okay, thank you. So all the study has shown is that many of the comments we hear today are just simply not true. Simply not true. Simply not true. Simply not true. And can you describe the amount of wealth that has been created through the increase of these properties? Because what I heard in your first committee is that the value of an RSO unit, one unit, has gone from 150,000 to 300,000 in the last 10 years. Isn't that what the study showed as well? Council President, I'm trying to really get to the heart of what I think is the issue here, and so it's really rude to see folks be here and be disruptive. So can you please describe the...
Folks, you're going to have to let members engage in this discussion. You know, there weren't people shouting out when you were talking, so we'd ask that you give the same respect. Mr. City Attorney.
Yes. Look, the council member speaking and other speakers are speaking as well. Please be quiet so we can hear what he has to say.
Thank you. Thank you, City Attorney. Can you speak on the increase of wealth of RSO units in the last 10 years, Ms. Ortega?
Yes, Councilman. According to the findings of the study, average values of RSO units have doubled over the last 10 years from about $150,000 to $300,000 per unit and are nearly 5 times above their 2000 level.
That is a lot of wealth creation happening in the city. And, you know, and that's, when I heard that, Ms. Ortega and everyone on the committee, I was kind of shocked. I actually did not expect that information to come out. And because at the same time that this is happening, what's also occurring in our city is we're seeing senior citizens being the largest group of folks that are being pushed into homelessness. And we know because most of them can't even pay their rent. We know that hundreds of thousands of people in the city are rent burdened. And we haven't even touched on how we've gotten to this point, right? We've gotten to this point because if we look at the last 30 years, 23 of those 30 years, inflation was 0, 1, or 2. However, landlords, small or big, were still able to get 3%. And so when I think about the issue in front of us, we have to do something. And whatever comes out today is going to be a positive. But we have to approach this issue and do the best that we possibly can for people, not just in the future, but now. People are asking us to do something now and in the future. And my amendment that I introduced that puts it at 75% of CPI makes it so that something happens now. I know there's an amendment there for 90% of CPI, but I hate to say it, but that doesn't address the now. If 90% CPI is moved forward, renters and tenants in the city are basically going to pay the same amount. We've done no change for them in the now. I am asking this body to do something now and in the future. I think if we look at just the formula, from 1 to 4, the future will look different. But I'm asking us to do something now. And so I appreciate Ms. Ortega really highlighting what I think is at the heart of it is where's the money going and who's really suffering because of this, in my opinion, so the income inequality that exists in this city. And so I might have more questions, but I want to cede my time for the rest of the body.
Thank you.
So to the comment that Mr. Soto-Martinez made in dismissing their outrages, it's born for good reason, and it's based on the dynamics that this body has enabled and frankly continue to jerk them around on, going back to what they experienced in COVID. The financial impacts of what they have experienced cannot be stated strong enough. When I think back about the line that continued to get pushed from COVID, their inability to recover, the financial impact of what they had to bear during those dynamics, that affected everybody. And when I think about the environment that we're creating, because I agree, Ms. Rahman, the rent is too damn high. But you can't ignore the hand you play in helping to obstruct that housing being invested in and developed in the city when you continue to make it an unknown return on your investment. People don't want to invest in the city when they keep having the needle move and the line move. That's a reality.
You know, what infuriates me is that this body has become financial advisors to investments instead of guardians for the most vulnerable people in our city. And the second thing that infuriates me is all the cleanup that we have to do as new council members around this horseshoe for the years and years and years of dereliction of duty. There is a reason why we had to do the sewage fees. It's because they weren't done for years. And let's also talk about the sewage fees and how tenants living in buildings of 4+ units have had to pay the full amount for these sanitation fees while we have subsidized everybody else with our general funds with hundreds of millions of dollars going on for years. So let's talk about in this moment that we're in where we get to decide, yes, there are winners and losers right now. And for the most part, it's been poor people, low-income people, our seniors who have been receiving the short end of the stick. And also, let's talk about why we're in this mess of our housing providers being upset because of what happened during COVID-19. That is another thing that we have to clean up as a new body. And we talk about it regularly, but there is really no solutions. What comes up is always opposition to trying to step up for our most vulnerable communities. But we should be stepping up more for our small mom and pop landlords, and that hasn't happened. And you have a lot of people around this horseshoe that would throw down for you, but that cleanup of 2020 has not happened. And I want y'all to question that. Instead of always trying to fight against our most vulnerable, how do we step up and do better for you all? And I have not seen that solution come up to clean up what happened during COVID, because I do agree that is a loss to you all. But we have an eviction to homelessness pipeline. We get calls constantly from property owners about people experiencing homelessness around their buildings, and we are struggling to deal with that crisis. We can't house the number of people every year that are falling into homelessness, and a majority of that is because they can no longer afford it. You have workers driving hours just to work in the city because they can't afford to live in the city. So I just want to say, we're going to have a conversation about this. Let's have a real conversation about it. But also, as this body, we have a duty, and it is to serve both groups. But we've had a losing group for some time, and that is tenants, as we can see through the eviction and homelessness pipeline. So that's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Who's been at this for a few years, and all the members that worked really hard. I know members worked late into the night last night, and we're up early working on this very, very important issue that is just, this is one of those issues that I say to my colleagues, this is a tough call. There's a lot of this that I like. There's a lot of it that I don't like. There's a lot of it that I have philosophical problems with, frankly. But I am clear about this. This council needs to pass something today to protect renters. So we have amendments and we have the full motion before us. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes, 2 noes.